12 people were taken hostage during the First National Bank robbery on Tuesday morning. Every single witness gave the same description: 3 armed men in black masks demanding money from the vault. But the security cameras only recorded 2 robbers entering the bank. When I discovered who the invisible third man really was, the case took a turn that challenged everything I thought I knew about eyewitness testimony. I'm Detective James Carter, and in 23 years of investigating armed robberies, I've learned that what people think they see and what actually happened are often 2 completely different things. But the case of the invisible witness would teach me that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody suspects is there. The call came in at 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. First National Bank on Commerce Street had been robbed by what witnesses described as 3 armed men who had taken 12 people hostage for nearly an hour before escaping with approximately $200,000 in cash. When I arrived at the scene, the bank was surrounded by police cars, ambulances, and news crews. The hostages had been released unharmed, but they were clearly traumatized by their experience. "Detective Carter," said Sergeant Williams as I approached the bank entrance, "we've got a situation that doesn't make sense." "What kind of situation?" "Every witness is telling the same story about 3 robbers, but our security footage only shows 2 men entering and leaving the bank. Could there be a problem with the cameras?" "That's what we thought initially, but the bank's security system is state-of-the-art. Multiple cameras, different angles, digital recording with timestamps. There's no technical malfunction." Williams led me into the bank, where the hostages were being interviewed by other officers. The interior was a modern banking facility with marble floors, glass partitions, and security cameras positioned throughout the space. "Sergeant, who's in charge of the bank's security system?" "Jennifer Walsh, the bank manager. She's been cooperating fully, but she seems as confused as everyone else about the discrepancy between witness statements and video evidence." I examined the bank's layout carefully. There were 6 security cameras covering the main banking floor, 2 covering the entrance, and 3 covering the vault area. If 3 people had robbed this bank, at least one camera should have captured all 3 of them. "Williams, I want to interview the witnesses individually, starting with the bank employees. And I need to review every second of security footage from this morning." My first interview was with Jennifer Walsh, the bank manager. Jennifer was a woman in her early 40s, professionally dressed, but clearly shaken by the morning's events. She had been working at First National for 8 years and had never experienced a robbery before. "Walsh, walk me through exactly what happened this morning." "I was in my office reviewing loan applications when I heard shouting from the main floor. I looked out and saw 3 men in black masks and dark clothing. They had guns and were ordering everyone to get on the floor." "Can you describe these 3 men?" "The first man was tall, probably 6'2", wearing a black hoodie. The second man was shorter but stocky, wearing a black jacket. The third man was medium height, thin build, also in dark clothing." "Did all 3 men have weapons?" "Yes, they each had handguns. The tall man seemed to be the leader. He was giving orders to the other 2. "What happened next?" "The tall man forced me to open the vault while the other 2 watched the hostages. The whole thing took about 45 minutes. "Did you notice anything unusual about any of the 3 men?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "The thin man, the third one, seemed nervous. He kept checking his watch and looking toward the entrance as if he was worried about something." "Did any of the men speak to each other?" "Not much. The leader gave orders, but the other 2 mostly just followed his instructions." I made notes about Jennifer's description, but I was already noticing something odd. Her account was very detailed and specific, almost as if she had been expecting to be questioned about it. "Walsh, how well do you know the bank's security system?" "Very well. I'm responsible for monitoring the cameras and maintaining the security protocols." "Have you reviewed the security footage from this morning?" "Briefly, yes. I helped the officers identify the time stamps for when the robbery began and ended." "And you noticed that the footage only shows 2 men?" Jennifer looked uncomfortable. "Yes, that's strange. I don't understand how that's possible. Is it possible that one of the cameras malfunctioned?" "Detective, I've checked every camera feed multiple times. The system was working perfectly. But I saw 3 men with my own eyes." I moved on to interview the security guard, Marcus Thompson. Marcus was a man in his 50s who had worked bank security for over 15 years. He was built like someone who could handle trouble, but he seemed unusually nervous during our interview. "Mr. Thompson, where were you when the robbery began?" "I was at the front entrance, checking IDs and greeting customers. It's standard protocol for me to be visible near the door." "What did you see when the robbers entered?" Three men in masks pushed through the main door around 10:15 a.m. They immediately drew weapons and started shouting orders. Did you attempt to stop them? Marcus looked ashamed. Detective, they had the drop on me completely. The leader pointed his gun at my head and told me to get on the floor with everyone else. I had no choice but to comply. Can you describe the three men? The leader was tall and confident, clearly experienced. The second man was built like a bodybuilder, very intimidating. The third man was thinner, seemed more nervous than the others. Did you notice anything specific about their behavior or clothing? The thin man kept wiping his hands on his pants like he was sweating. And he had a distinctive walk, kind of limping slightly on his left leg. Mr. Thompson, you've been a security guard for 15 years. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Never. And detective, there's something that's been bothering me about the whole thing. What's that? The way they moved through the bank. It was like they knew exactly where the cameras were positioned and how to avoid being seen clearly. This was an important observation. If the robbers knew the camera locations, they might have planned their movements to keep one person out of camera range. Marcus, who has access to information about camera placement? Bank employees, the security company that installed the system, and law enforcement when they've needed the information for previous investigations. How many people work at this bank? About 25 full-time employees, plus part-time tellers and maintenance staff. I made a note to get a complete employee list and check backgrounds for anyone with criminal connections. My next interview was with Susan Rodriguez, one of the customers who had been taken hostage. Susan was a woman in her 70s who had been at the bank to make a deposit when the robbery began. Despite her age, she seemed alert and observant. Mrs. Rodriguez, can you tell me what you saw this morning? I was standing in line to see a teller when three men burst through the door. They were all wearing black masks and carrying guns. Can you describe the three men? The first man was very tall and seemed to be in charge. The second man was shorter but very muscular. The third man was thinner and seemed scared. He kept looking around like he expected someone to come after him. Did you notice anything unusual about their behavior? The thin man kept checking his phone, which seemed odd during a robbery. And when one of the other hostages started crying, he looked like he felt bad about it. Mrs. Rodriguez, you mentioned that one of the men kept checking his phone. Did you see what he was looking at? I couldn't see the screen, but it looked like he was reading text messages. How long were you able to observe the three men? The whole time, about 45 minutes. I was lying on the floor near the teller counter, so I had a clear view of all three of them. After interviewing 6 more hostages, I had a consistent picture. Every witness described three men with remarkably similar details about their appearance and behavior. But the security footage told a different story. I spent the next 2 hours reviewing every frame of security video from the morning of the robbery. The cameras clearly showed 2 men entering the bank at 10:15 a.m. The tall man in the black hoodie and the stocky man in the black jacket. They moved efficiently through the bank, herding hostages and accessing the vault. They exited at 11:02 a.m. But there was no third person visible on any camera from any angle at any point during the robbery. I had the technical team enhance the footage and check for any possible digital manipulation or camera malfunctions. The video was authentic and the equipment had been functioning perfectly. So how had 12 witnesses all seen the same third person who apparently didn't exist? I decided to review the witness statements more carefully, looking for any inconsistencies or details that might explain the discrepancy. What I found was disturbing. The witnesses weren't just consistent in their descriptions, they were too consistent. Almost as if they had all rehearsed the same story. Every witness described the third man as thin, nervous, and checking his watch or phone. Every witness mentioned that he seemed scared or uncomfortable. These were unusually specific details for people who had been terrorized during a traumatic experience. In my experience, witness statements from traumatic events are usually inconsistent, contradictory, and focused on different details. But these statements read like they had been written by the same person. I called Jennifer Walsh back to the station for a follow-up interview. Walsh, I've been reviewing the security footage and witness statements, and I have some concerns. What kind of concerns, detective? The level of consistency in the witness descriptions is unusual. It's as if everyone was coached to tell the same story. Jennifer looked nervous. I don't understand what you're suggesting. I'm suggesting that someone wanted us to believe there were 3 robbers when there were actually only 2. But why would someone do that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Walsh, did you know both of the robbers? She was quiet for a long time. Detective, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. The robbery wasn't random. One of the robbers was my ex-boyfriend, Danny Morrison. This was the break I'd been waiting for. When did you last see Danny Morrison before today? 3 months ago. He came to the bank asking for a loan to start a business. I had to turn him down because of his credit history. How did he react to being rejected? He was angry. He said I was treating him unfairly because of our past relationship. He threatened to make me regret my decision. Did you report this threat? No, I thought he was just upset and would get over it. Walsh, did Danny Morrison know about the bank's security system? He'd been to the bank many times when we were dating. He knew where the cameras were located. And did he know your work schedule? Yes, he knew I always worked Tuesday mornings. The pieces were starting to come together. Danny Morrison had planned a robbery of his ex-girlfriend's bank, using his knowledge of the security system to avoid being clearly identified on camera. Walsh, why did you tell everyone there were 3 robbers when you knew there were only 2? Jennifer started crying. Because Danny told me to. What do you mean? Danny called me yesterday and told me about the robbery. He said if I cooperated and made sure all the witnesses described 3 robbers, no one would get hurt. And if you didn't cooperate? He said he would hurt the customers, starting with the elderly ones. So you coached the witnesses to give false testimony? After the robbers left, while we were waiting for police to arrive, I told everyone that it was important we all gave consistent statements to help catch the criminals. I described the 3 men we had supposedly seen, and everyone agreed to stick to that story. But why did Danny want people to think there were 3 robbers? He said it would confuse the investigation and make it harder for police to identify him and his partner. Jennifer Walsh was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice for her role in the robbery and cover-up. But I still needed to catch Danny Morrison and his accomplice. Based on Jennifer's information, I was able to identify Danny Morrison through criminal records. He was a 34-year-old man with previous convictions for theft and assault. His known associates included several people with robbery experience. I put out an APB for Danny Morrison and began investigating his recent activities. Within 6 hours we had a lead. Danny had been staying at a motel on the outskirts of town with a man named Kevin Walsh, Jennifer's brother. When I realized that Kevin Walsh was Jennifer's brother, the entire conspiracy became clear. Jennifer hadn't just been coerced into helping with the robbery, her own brother was one of the robbers. We arrested Danny Morrison and Kevin Walsh at the Sunset Motel that evening. Both men had the stolen money in their possession, along with the weapons and clothing used in the robbery. During questioning, Danny Morrison confirmed what I had suspected. Detective, the whole thing was Kevin's idea. He knew about his sister's work schedule and the bank's security system because she had mentioned it during family dinners. And the plan to create a fake third robber? Kevin suggested it. He said if witnesses thought there were 3 of us, it would be harder for police to narrow down suspects. Plus, if Jennifer got caught helping us, she could claim she was forced to cooperate because there were more robbers than she could handle. Did Jennifer know her brother was involved? Not until we walked into the bank. When she saw Kevin, she realized what was happening, but it was too late to back out. Kevin Walsh's confession filled in the remaining details. Detective, I'd been having financial problems for months. I knew Jennifer wouldn't lend me money, but I thought if I robbed her bank, I could make it look like she was just another victim. So you recruited Danny Morrison to help? Danny was still angry about Jennifer rejecting his loan application. It didn't take much convincing to get him involved. And the plan to confuse witness testimony? I figured if everyone thought there were 3 robbers, it would take police longer to identify us. Plus, having a third robber made our story more believable. 2 men would have a harder time controlling 12 hostages. The case of the invisible witness revealed a sophisticated plan to manipulate eyewitness testimony and confuse a police investigation. Jennifer Walsh had used her position as bank manager to coach witnesses into providing false information, while her brother and his accomplice had exploited their knowledge of the bank's operations and security systems. But the plan had a fundamental flaw. They had underestimated the reliability of digital evidence. While witness testimony could be manipulated, security cameras don't lie. Danny Morrison and Kevin Walsh were each sentenced to 15 years in prison for armed robbery. Jennifer Walsh received 5 years for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The case taught me an important lesson about the difference between what people think they see and what actually happens. In high-stress situations, witnesses can be surprisingly susceptible to suggestion, especially when that suggestion comes from someone they trust. But it also reinforced my faith in physical evidence and technology. 12 people had sworn they saw 3 robbers, but the cameras told the truth. There were only 2. The invisible third robber had been a collective hallucination, created by fear, confusion, and deliberate manipulation. The real criminals were hiding in plain sight, one behind a mask and one behind a badge of authority. Every case tells a story, and the story of the invisible witness was about how the people we trust most can sometimes be the ones deceiving us. Jennifer Walsh had used her position as a victim to cover up her role as an accomplice, turning 12 innocent people into unwitting participants in a lie. But the truth has a way of revealing itself, especially when it's captured in high-definition video and stored on digital servers that don't forget, don't panic, and don't let emotion cloud their judgment. In the end, the most important witness to the crime wasn't a person at all. It was the silent, invisible eye of the security camera that saw everything and remembered it perfectly.